We've got some breaking news from the Fed. Speaking of, let's get out to Steve Leishman. Steve, what's happening?
President Goolsbee, the Chicago Fed President Kelly, making some pointed and cautionary remarks about tariffs in a speech he's giving in Detroit. He's saying the Fed will take into account anything that raised prices in the making of monetary policy. Says the Fed will be in a potentially difficult position trying to figure out if price increases are from overheating or from tariffs as the source of inflation. The latter, the former you would not look through, the latter you might. Tariff effects, he says, could be larger and longer impacting than in 2018 because things about the economy are different, he says, because many U.S. imports, by the way, are intermediate goods. Inflationary impact of tariffs could be more widespread. It's possible, he says, and this is something you guys have talked a lot about, to stack tariffs on top of tariffs as something goes back and forth over the border several times. Supply chains, he says, are more fragile in the short run. And if you want to talk at the end of this about what he says about the increase and the absence of toilet paper during the pandemic, we can have that. But first, let me tell you what he says about tariffs and inflation. One is they can, this question is how much consumers can substitute for a product. Intermediate goods are more difficult to substitute for. Is the easy China substitution, for example, from the impact of 2018, is that gone? And so it's harder to substitute this time around. And did companies diversify their supply chains? And then he talks about differing views from automakers that he's talking to about the possibility of passing along tariffs. So, Brian, very interesting comments, and maybe one of these days we'll talk about why there was the toilet paper apocalypse, as Goolsbee mentions it in his speech.
Yeah, and I don't think it had to do with demand outpacing supply. I think demand for toilet paper remains fairly steady. Did it really? I thought so. Demand went.
Yeah.
How does toilet paper demand go up, Steve? Don't answer that. Don't answer that.
This speech is worth reading just for that anecdote, that economic anecdote. What happened is the location of the demand changed, Brian, is that people started being at home rather than in the office.
Oh.
And the supply of toilet paper to the office is different from the supply of toilet paper to the home. They're different grades, different distributors, different retailers.
We all should have rated the office
So they were
supply.
in the wrong place.
That would have solved it in the moment.
That makes, can you spare a square? But you needed two squares because depending on where the square might be used.
And then he uses this whole anecdote.
My demand area doesn't change.
Right, exactly. But your location may change. And he uses this whole anecdote as an explanation to be careful about tariffs because of how difficult it can be for supply chains to adjust.